670 KBOI. We talk to Democrats about the latest news in the Idaho legislature. Now here are Paul, Jay, and Chris on 670 KBOI.
At top of the morning, our guest today from the Democratic Party, Grant Burgoyne, Senator Burgoyne from District 16, a second-termer. And Senator, you serve on local government and taxation. One of the big stories is the grocery tax repeal bill. Positives and negatives to this bill, and how do you see it? And do you think it will go anywhere this year?
Well, I'm very strongly in favor of cutting the grocery tax. When I first ran for the House of Representatives in 2008, I ran against it, and I still feel the same way. Very quick story. During the recession, family member who was having some financial difficulties did that, buy $200 worth of groceries with $200 worth of coupons. And my family member had $12 for the sales tax, which is what it would take to do that. But she also noticed that there were a lot of folks who didn't have the $12, and she would see people have to, at the register, leave their groceries behind and go out of the store pretty embarrassed and then humiliated, probably worried about how to feed their families. And there's a little lesson in there, which is when you don't have it, even a little bit of money can seem like a fortune. And I've always supported tax incentives to grow business and the economy and create good-paying jobs, but we have to recognize our people have gotten left behind and they need help.
The tax on food is a big chunk of money. $150 million, is that right?
Yeah, around a little less, actually.
How are you going to make that up?
Well, there's a considerable amount of money in the tax credit that people get when they file their returns the following year, and so that'll make up quite a bit of it. But it does come with a price, $20 to $30 million. But we, through some of the incentives that we've put in the tax code through the recession, we're growing the revenues of the state of Idaho. Not as much as I'd like, but we are. And some of us who have better paying jobs are benefiting from that, and I think it's time to give a little back. The other thing about the grocery tax is that it helps everybody to get rid of it, whether you're making just a little or whether you're making a lot. And so
it's not great to own a grocery store in Fruitland.
No, it's not, and this is one of the problems. I remember when Weiser and Payette had vibrant downtowns. What do they have now? We just look across the bridge at Fruitland and see the Walmart and see everything that's going on across the border, and we can tell that we've got real problems. And those communities directly impact what happens to us here in the Treasure Valley. So it's I think economically the right thing to do, and it's the right thing to do for our people. Taxes shouldn't be unfair, and they shouldn't create an undue burden, and this one does.
In Idaho, we are very versatile. We have open primaries and closed primaries and caucuses. Which should we maybe have altogether?
Well, I have two principles. One, I've never liked the Democratic Party's presidential caucus. Mm-hmm. If you are housebound, you can't get there. So the elderly, the infirm have difficulties with it. People who work at nights have problems with it. With respect to closed primary, I'm very much against the closed primary. It shuts people out. We see elections in Idaho being decided, people being effectively elected to office in the Republican primaries, where less than 20% of the registered Republicans are voting. And think about this, half the people aren't registered to vote. And then of the people who are registered to vote, probably a plurality of the people in the state are unaffiliated independents. And so you're talking about probably a third of a half, and then about 10 to 20% of those people effectively choosing who gets office. That's not really a democracy.
There's also been an effort by some to close down the early voting, and so you have just a few days. How do you feel about that?
Well, here's how we do election laws in the United States of America. Whoever's in control writes the election laws, and they write them to give them more control. There are very few politicians who are out there saying, what is fair? What can we do to help the ordinary person vote more easily? they are always in the back of their mind thinking about how I can get a political advantage. And that's how I approach election law bills, is what's in it for whom. And so that makes me pretty suspicious of anything that comes down.
We're talking with Senator Grant Burgoyne from District 16 on this Minority Friday. KBOI News Time, 8:45. Join Joe Print in the home.
Idaho Talks Live. It is 8:49 on this Minority Friday. Sorry about that. Not majority. Majority's Thursday.
There's always time, right?
There's always hope.
Minority Friday, when we talk to Democrats from the Idaho State Legislature. Senator Grant Burgoyne is here from District 16. The people who go down and protest for the Add the Words every single year were there again this year. And I guess they were just told to leave, so nothing's going to happen there. That and Medicaid expansion, are either one of those things, is anybody working on those? Let's say that. Let's put it that way.
Well, people are working on them, but nothing's going to happen.
Okay.
Since the election, I think there's actually been some erosion. Things have actually kind of started to move a little the other direction against Add the Words and against taking care of the gap population.
Talking the national election here?
Yes, well, the national and we had a state election here in November as well. And the Trump phenomenon hit Idaho. Our numbers as Democrats in the legislature are down. And so things have gotten tougher. I think on the gap population, the only way we can solve that problem in Idaho is with federal money. That's just a reality. If we have to rely solely on state money, we're just not going to be able to get the job done. Maybe now that the Republicans and the control the Congress and the presidency, their solution would be a little bit more acceptable in Idaho than the Obama solution was. I don't know. Whatever they come up with. And on Add the Words, I tried, along with Representative Wintrow from Boise, to run a amendment to the malicious harassment bill to include sexual orientation and gender identity. We ran into a lot of brick walls. Couldn't even get that done, even though, we've had a murder in Nampa that was a hate crime, and we've had other incidents in the state. Just can't get any traction.
Senate refused to pass a resolution calling for an Article 5 convention to propose amendments to the U.S. Constitution, basically from here, balance the budget. How do you feel about that, and how do you feel about the resolution not passing?
Well, I favor a federal balanced budget amendment. However, the Constitutional Convention, I think, is a step too far for a couple of reasons. One, I just don't think you can contain a Constitutional Convention. In the speech that I gave on the floor of the Senate opposing the resolution for calling a convention, I kind of laid out the reasons why. But our history kind of shows, and I think our constitutional law shows, that the states and the federal government don't have power over the people on constitutional conventions. The people have power over their governments. And so I think the risks, for everything that I would love to do in a constitutional convention, maybe get rid of the Electoral College or a few things where I think they're anti-democratic things in our Constitution. I can give you a long list of things that I wouldn't like to see happen in a constitutional convention. And I don't think a balanced budget amendment on its own is going to get the job done. One of the problems that we have in the United States is political leaders not really doing what the people think ought to be done. What makes us think if we pass an amendment that they're all of a sudden going to fall into line?
Yeah. We've heard that natural gas and oil rules are changing for the state, based on what comes out of this state. What are the changes?
Well, greater transparency, some rejiggering of how many folks have to agree in a given area for drilling to be done. And there's a real property rights issue and a real property rights deficiency in the laws that have been passed so far on this. I think giving too much power to the drillers and not enough to the people who own the rights and own the property. And there's some legislation percolating through that seeks to moderate some of that. I don't know that it goes as far as I want it to, but I think we're beginning to realize that we shouldn't be giving a blank check to the oil and gas industry. And I'm afraid, at least my opinion was, that that's what we did in the first round. And hopefully the second and third rounds, we begin to claw some of that back. We're not getting the right amount of severance payments or taxes out of the oil and gas industry either. I don't think we want to be taken for chumps. We ought to be looking around the rest of the country and seeing what worked and what didn't work, and trying to use that here.
$52 million has been shoved into emergency road funding a couple of days ago. That's virtually the entire state budget surplus. But a lot of people saying it's not enough. What are we going to do about the road situation? We got a lot of roads, not much population, which always creates a problem.
Well, there's never enough in the state of Idaho. We are not a wealthy state.
Right.
And our needs are pretty great. And we're trying to keep up with other states that have much more robust economies than we do, like Utah, and we have to compete with them. So the fact that we don't have enough really doesn't define the true problem. The issue is whether we're choosing the right priorities. On this one, even though I've not been in favor of using general fund money, which competes with education and Medicaid and other things for roads, we have an emergency, and we've got to address that emergency. And the use of that $52 million that way struck me as a good idea. No, it's not enough, but will it do the bare minimum of what we need to do? Yeah, I think we'll manage.
Stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
There have been some other, I guess you'd say, less general things proposed in the legislature this year, like the secret lottery, or the lottery winner's secrecy law. Now, I kind of like that because I've always thought, well, that would be the one drawback to winning the lottery, is that everybody knows how much money you have now. But that didn't pass.
Well, there are competing interests involved there. I understand that people would like to just, keep it all secret. But, the lottery has been sold to the state of Idaho on the idea that this is going to be a game that attracts a certain amount of attention and marketing, and then it's going to help the schools and all of that. And so you have two sides to the coin there, and you have to balance that. And what you sometimes find is that good ideas take a little while to gain traction. I've been in the legislature 9 years now, and I had some great ideas when I came, and they're still trying to gain traction. So I appreciate the problem.
Thanks, Senator. We've been talking with Senator Grant Burgoyne, District 16. That's our Minority Friday.